Dear partners and colleagues, welcome to this second tutorial of a series of 5 in which we share the basics of the CCV store with you. The first video was a brief introduction to the App Store. In this second tutorial we're going to create our first terminal. Before we create our terminal, we first pay attention to the layout of our store. Next we create an actual terminal. We replace existing hardware. We remove a terminal, and finally we take a first look at the distribution of apps. With just 1 to 10 terminals to manage in your store, it's easy to keep a good overview. But once you manage dozens or more terminals, you'll wish you had a good structure from the start. So, before we create a terminal, we should think about our store layout. In other words, the way we functionally group all of our terminals. Such a layout consists of a tree structure under which terminals can be grouped. Creating the tree structure can be done by the application of categories. The first category type is called sub-reseller, to which apps can be assigned. And the second category type is called merchant, to which terminals can be assigned. It's important to set up a structure that corresponds to the way in which you want to distribute apps to your various customer groups. Given its importance, we take a closer look at the actual store. We are at the Terminal Management menu, where the screen consists of 3 planes. All the way to the left, the blue menu bar. Next to it, the Terminal Management area showing the actual tree structure of your company. And on the far right, the area with reseller details of the active sub-reseller. This should look similar to your screen after you log in for the first time. Let's take a closer look at the available structure in this specific environment. Although there are many ways, at CCV we focus at which payment initiation apps we target to specific customer groups. In our case, we differentiate mostly between SalesPoint, PayStart and third-party apps. Next, we apply the category merchants for each type of terminal that we sell to a group of customers. For example, the CCV Smart, the CCV Mobile and the CCV Compact. This enables us to quickly focus on, for instance, all smart terminals which run with SalesPoint when we have to deal with firmware or software updates. Another way, for example, is to create a merchant category for each customer separately, including all merchant information. In our opinion, this is very time-consuming, and besides, most companies already have stored their merchant information in systems that are far better suited for such task. So again, we would advise to group terminals under a merchant that corresponds with the type of terminal that you sell, and then bundle them again for those customers to whom you want to assign specific apps to. Let me briefly demonstrate how to add a category by creating an extra sub-reseller, Test Acceptance. We activate it, and as you can see, it has been created and added to our tree structure. But before we can assign terminals to this category, we should first add a merchant level to it, which works exactly the same way. This should get you started with building your own basic structure. Now that we've covered the importance of a good store layout, it's time to move on to the next topic and create our first terminal. Except for the PayGear payment engine, a new terminal doesn't contain any payment initiation apps. But it takes just 3 steps to prepare an out-of-the-box terminal for readiness. The first step is identical to non-Android terminals and involves entering a terminal in MyCCV Terminal Management. Or if you don't have access to MyCCV Terminal Management, you normally receive the necessary data, such as the TMS ID, from CCV. The second step involves entering the terminal in the CCV store. We do so with the TMS ID from step 1, but still without the terminal serial number. To avoid TMS ID duplications in the CCV store, we use the TMS ID with a prefix. TNL is the prefix for terminals that have been created in the Dutch version of MyCCV Terminal Management. TBE is the prefix for terminals that have been created in the Belgian version of MyCCV Terminal Management. Finally, the third step involves the terminal activation by linking the TMS ID to the terminal serial number. Let's create one ourselves to see how it's done. Since the first step should already be known, we go directly to the CCV store for the second step. In the Terminal Management menu, we're going to create our first terminal in the PayStart category under Merchant CCV Compact. We choose the terminal list and press the green button on the far right to add a terminal. We give the terminal a name. We enter the terminal ID preceded by the prefix. We skip the serial number for now, but we do indicate what kind of terminal it is, and finally we click OK. The terminal has now been created and is known in the CCV store, but it's not yet active. For that, we continue with step 3 on the terminal itself. This is what the terminal screen out of the box looks like, and we are now going to activate this terminal by linking its serial number to the TMS ID that we just entered in the store. We open the CCV store client on the terminal. We receive a message that the serial number of this terminal is not yet known in the store. Therefore, we click on the yellow gear icon in the upper right corner to connect to the store for the first time. Next, a connection is being made, and now we can enter the terminal ID with its prefix. And click Next. We check whether we've entered the correct terminal ID, and we confirm by clicking Initialization. The terminal and the CCV store sync their information, resulting in the activation and appearance of all available apps in the CCV store client. The terminal is now ready to use. So we've just created an out-of-the-box terminal. Let's see how to replace the hardware of an existing terminal. When it comes to replacing the hardware of an existing terminal, it basically comes down to the third step of terminal activation as we just went through. On the new hardware, we click on the yellow gear icon in the upper right corner to connect to the store for the first time. Instead of choosing Initialization, we choose Replacement. And next we enter the serial number of the old hardware we want to replace. We check whether we've entered the correct serial number and confirm by clicking Replacement. The terminal and the CCV store sync their information, resulting in a Replaced Success notification. You should now be able to use the terminal with the new hardware. If you know how to create and replace a terminal, you should also know how to remove one. For instance, if one of your customers switches to a competitor. You should really remove its terminals from your store environment, mainly for the release of concerning serial numbers, but also to avoid the risk of paying the license fees for customers who are no longer yours. To remove a terminal, you select it in the terminal list. On the Terminal Details pane, you go to the upper right corner and press the 3 dots for the pull-down menu. If the terminal is active, your first step is to disable it. Only after you've done so, you're able to delete it. After removal, the terminal in question will still work, but can only be maintained again once it has been attributed to a merchant again in the CCV store. And now the last part of this tutorial, the distribution of apps. As said earlier, apps can be assigned to the sub-reseller category and terminals to the merchant category. We've created our first terminal in the category of PayStart under the Merchant CCV Compact. Let's have a closer look at the installed apps on our newly created terminal. Next, we go to the App List menu, and here we see all apps that have been made available. Let's take a look at the Service app. At App Distribution, we see that this app has been assigned to both the PayStart and the SalesPoint resellers. But if we look at the SalesPoint app and the PayStart app, we see that they have only been made available to their corresponding sub-reseller category. We can indicate per app to which sub-resellers it should be distributed. Let's assign the service app to another sub-reseller to see how you can immediately distribute apps yourself. We go to the app list, choose the service app, and at App Distribution we click on Update App Distribution. We view all available sub-resellers and add third-party app to the distribution list. And we can see that the distribution list is immediately expanded with the third-party app reseller. This was the first brief introduction to app distribution. Definitely try it yourself, but to avoid security key problems, don't do this under any circumstances with the PayGear app. I hope you were able to successfully create your first terminal. Please make sure you check out our other tutorials and feel free to share these with your colleagues. If you still have technical questions while using the CCV store, do not hesitate to send us an email. That was it for now. Thanks again for watching.